Now, as we all know, Christmas Day is meant to represent a celebration of the birth of the Messiah, Jesus, right? Only, it's not actually mentioned, I think, in the Bible that December 25th was the birth of Jesus, and that was more likely put in place as a result of the fact that they were trying to cover up and mask over the pagan holiday of Yule, which is December 21st. So, and also, there's no way a Capricorn was going to sacrifice himself for the greater good of mankind. Point is, if this is a movie about the birth of Jesus in some connection, so what better way to celebrate a day about the birth of Jesus than a movie that satirizes the whole concept of religion in the first place? Hello everyone, and welcome back to the ASMR review show. We have another Christmas beer episode for you, and today's beer we have a really nice one for all you musicians out there. This is the Amplifier Sonicated Triple IPA. Oh, that's another strong one. 8%. Oh man, that's pretty crazy. I'm assuming this one's probably going to be pretty bitter. Flavor notes: zingy, zesty, turn to 11. Because these amps go to 11. Interesting fact: we forget that it's usually not the instruments and the voices we are hearing, but a vibrating piece of paper with an attached coil of wire in a magnetic field, amplified and shaped by the sound of the speaker. Pretty cool. The way the electric signal travels through the guitar and through the amp and produces sound and gets all modulated with all your cool effects. Yeah. This one doesn't really reference the film at all that I'm talking about. But, maybe if I was talking about Jesus Christ, a Superstar, it might be a little more closer in nature. But that's not the film we're talking about today. Anyway, let's crack this cold one open. Cheers. Oh yeah, that's triple IPA, all right. It's not as actually bitter and hoppy as I was expecting, though, and I think that's a good thing. I've had those really strong IPAs, I think I mentioned the Numbskull Imperial IPA from Lighthouse Brewing before. Or another one that's not the strongest of beers, but it is a pretty hoppy, bittery one, and that is Fat Tug by Driftwood, right? That is the perfect beer for seafood. I used to hate that beer. I tried it many times. I didn't like it, but everyone else I knew liked it. And then I had it one time at a seafood restaurant with a nice big old fish and chips. You can't beat classic fish and chips. And then all of a sudden it just clicked for me. It was you needed that food palette to go with the beer palette, and that is a thing. I don't think, wine's definitely a more fancy thing that I'm not as familiar with than beer, but you can get those really high-end craft beer places where they specifically try to have food pairings with the beer for stuff to work together with it. But it is a hoppy, bittery one, and it is quite strong, but yeah, there's a bit of a zing and a zest to it, and it would probably go nice with some good seafood. Where's some calamari when I need it, right? Very nice. So the film we have for today is, again, when I was looking up Christmas movies to review, most people, they were looking at the consumerist Christmas holiday idea, you buy presents for your family and Santa Claus and reindeer and elves, right? So, and then you've got the other ones where there's happens to take place at Christmas a little bit, and so people have jokingly counted that, right? Like Brazil or Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, or those in between ones like Nightmare Before Christmas, right? So most people were talking about those films, right? But no one was really counting like religious films as Christmas movies because it's not exactly about it. Like, I am taking a bit of a stretch on this one, right? But like at its root, that is the like concept of Christmas, right? It's a day that's meant to mark the birth of Jesus, right? And then it eventually has now become this whole more consumerist thing revolving around Santa Claus and gifts and all that stuff, right? And there's a lot of different holidays celebrated around this time, Krampus, Sinterklaas, Hanukkah, like a whole bunch of ones, right? So, all holidays are important, right? But I am like, in my, Western Canadian society, Christmas is kind of the dominant one. So, that's what I know primarily. So that's what I'm going to mainly talk about because it's my thing. But I didn't really see anyone talking about how films about Jesus or related to any kind of religion thing like that are Christmas movies. And I kind of thought, well, no, I think in a way those should count, right? Because that's what Christmas is about, right? The original concept to it. So I thought, well, you know what? There's a couple of religious films I wanted to talk about because I apparently have no fear of starting a huge debate in the comments section between the 5 people that watch my videos. So you know what? Screw it. We're going to talk about religion in this one, and I'm sure it's going to get extra controversial. Ooh. And of course, well, what could be more interesting than the second most controversial religious film of all time, which is the hilarious deadpan comedy of Monty Python's Life of Brian. So, Monty Python, of course, famous British sketch comedy. They eventually got the funding to make their own full-length film, directed by Terry Gilliam, who is a member of Monty Python. And of course, that was Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the quest for the Holy Grail. And that was kind of like sort of a satire of like fantasy epics and stories and like, parodying King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And it's a hilarious one. It's like one of the best comedies ever. If I had to pick my favorite film that was like a straight up comedy, it would probably be Dr. Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, because I'm a Kubrick fanboy. But number 2, kind of a toss-up. It would be hard to pick off the top of my head, but I think the first one that's coming to mind is The Holy Grail, because it's just such a hilariously insane movie, like they couldn't afford horses, so they just, walked around like clapping coconuts together. And, what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Bring out your dead. Oh, he's not dead yet, really. Right? He's mostly dead. Or, that's Princess Bride, but, similar connotation, right? It's just such a hilariously quotable and fun film. I love it so much. And I think the funding for a lot of that film was by some bands, like some great rock bands at the time, like Led Zeppelin, who helped finance the film so that it could get made. I know Pink Floyd, they were big fans of Monty Python as well. So that film was, I don't know if it was a big success when it came out, or if it was like a little small underground one, but it's looked back upon quite fondly these days, so that's pretty great. And so then they have a second one, which I think, I don't know off the top of my head, I think the second one, the one we're going to talk about, Life of Brian, I think that's their only other, like, full proper film. Because they have a couple other ones, but I think those are just, like, films that are collections of sketches, right? Like, oh, the title's escaping me right now. But there's, like, one where it starts off with this weird sketch of, like, people hiding in, like, shrubberies in the trees, and then explosions going off, and, you know, it ends with the guy saying, and now for something completely different. Big explosion. And then there's the other one where it's, like, a bunch of businessmen, they, like, take over their business building, and they turn it into a sailboat, and there's this giant building, like, sliding along to go conquer the rest of the world, but then it turns out the earth is flat in this version. So Meaning of Life, that was one of the Monty Python's Meaning of Life. And there was another one in there, right? Or unless they were the same, I'm not sure, maybe they were the same, and I just forgot. So Life of Brian, the second full-length film from 79, was it? The film that was so good it was banned in some countries, I think in, like, maybe either Norway or Finland, and it was given an X rating, and this was because it had very controversial content in this film. I think it's not just the fact that it has strong language and both male and female full frontal nudity. It's probably also the fact that there is a lot of religious content in this film that is quite controversial, you know, because nothing stirs the controversy like religion. And that's what this film was intending to do, because we follow the character of Brian, who's played by Graham Chapman, who was also King Arthur in Holy Grail, and he's born in Nazareth, and he's born the same night right next door to Jesus, right? So originally, like in the movie, the three wise men come to bestow their gifts upon him, and, you know, they give them to Brian's mother, right? But then eventually they come back in and take the gifts back because they can see the big heavenly light coming from the house next door. And so Jesus as character, he's not in the movie that much. He's kind of just off in the background or in the distance giving big speeches, you know, about blessed are the meek. And Brian, throughout his life's journey, he kind of gets ended up in the role of a messiah figure accidentally, right? You know, when you know, accidentally leave a sentence unfinished and you start a religion, right? You know, it's kind of like, you know, Shadow of the Colossus developers, Team Ico, right? When you accidentally leave your Shadow of the Colossus game unfinished and you start a religion, all praising the hidden secret of the game, to the point where the remake ends up including a secret about it. I never knew about that. The giant door opens. That's crazy. That's awesome. So yeah, Brian accidentally is a religion in this one. So yeah, it's a very oddball comedy, and I don't like it as much as Holy Grail, but I do really enjoy this one a lot. It is pretty hilarious. There's some real great classic moments in this one. Probably will be spoiling a lot of it, so, you know, if maybe you liked Holy Grail but didn't see this one, you should go check it out, because I think it is worth a watch. And I think it's one that gets better upon rewatch, because I remember the first time I watched it, I kind of thought, like, oh, that was good, but not as good as Holy Grail. And then I kind of appreciated a lot of the comedic bits a little more in it. So yeah, it's kind of a mockery of religion, because, like, we have this bit where they're kind of making fun of the whole, like, you know, he who says the name of God must be stoned to death, right? You know, all I said was that meal is good enough for... Am I allowed to say it, or am I going to get stoned to death? You know, that meal is good enough for Jehovah. And then, you know, there's all these women in the audience, but they're not allowed to be there, so they got all fake beards and stuff, and they're all like, yes, it was her. You were the one who threw the rock? Yes. I mean, yes. Great stuff. And, John Cleese in this film, other main member of Monty Python, he's got such great deadpan delivery in this one. He plays this leader of, I have to make sure I don't confuse it, because there's a lot of different groups. There's the People's Front of Judea, but then there's the Judean People's Front, right? And then there's a whole bunch of other similar, resistance groups. And he's like, what have the Romans ever done for us? Well, the aqueduct is nice. Of course, the aqueduct is, that's saying. But apart from the irrigation, the aqueducts, and all this stuff, what have the Romans ever done for us? So, pretty great moment. Unusual Suspect. I said his name right. He has a great parody of that for his prequels reviews, where he parodies it to be talking about what have the prequels ever done for us. Oh, well, the lightsaber duels and the music, right? Ewan McGregor. Yeah, he was admittedly good as Obi-Wan. He's a little more British than he's Scottish, but, come to Scotland, it's great. And one of the greatest moments, and it's such a silly, dumb moment. I don't think it's one that you'd think would get such a laugh out of you, but somehow it just works, and knowing the behind-the-scenes fact about it makes it even better, and that's the scene with, is it Pontius Pilate or whatever, right? That's who's meant to be, because, there's like, Hail Caesar, and, he's the head Inquisitor, and, that's Michael Palin playing him, and he was also in Brazil, as Jack, and then, of course, Brazil was directed by Terry Gilliam, right? Another member of Monty Python. That's why there's all these Monty Python connections. And Terry Gilliam, he also did, 12 Monkeys, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and the Zero Theorem, a whole bunch of other ones that I haven't seen. His voice, he's just got such a crazy accent. So your father was a Roman? No, a Roman. Shake him some cherry and very waffly. And throw him to the floor, sir? What? Throw him to the floor? Oh yes, throw him to the floor. Throw him to the floor. Little rascal, a spirit, did he? What's that? A spirit? About 11, sir. No, spirit. Sort of bravado. About 11, right? I said that already. And the great behind the scenes footage, right, is that Brian tells him that his father was a Roman, therefore Brian is a Roman, that his father's name was Nautius Maximus, which apparently is the actual name, but everyone starts having a laugh at it, that it's a joke name, Silius Sausage or Bigasticus. I happen to have a very good friend in Rome named Bigasticus. And then all the soldiers in the background are laughing. And the hilarious behind-the-scenes footage thing about that was that, I guess, according to the trivia pages and stuff, these actors in the background were told, okay, all you have to do is stand here and you're not allowed to laugh. If you laugh or crack up, you get fired and you don't get paid, right? And then Michael Palin's character, he's just doing everything he can to try to get in these guards' faces and make them crack up and laugh, right? So knowing that these people are in real life trying their hardest, contorting their faces trying not to laugh is just so hilarious, right? And he's just literally right above the guy's faces. Does anybody feel like a little giggle when I say the name Tickles? Tickles. The look on their faces when he's all he has a wife, just oh no, we're not gonna win this one. And And then it's got, right after that, it's followed up by like one of the greatest WTF moments ever in a film. And that's Brian jumps off this tower, or falls off this tower, and then what happens? Well, an alien spaceship picks him up, and he's on this alien spaceship, and it suddenly turns into Star Wars, or like spaceships flying around, and lasers going off, and miniatures, and blue screen, and everything. And luckily, he ends up crashing back down right into the same part of the planet. You know, that was pretty convenient, but I don't know if this film is still on Netflix, but there was a time where when you hovered over it on Netflix, the picture it showed was like a picture showing him in the alien spaceship with the two aliens. I really didn't like that. Like, that's not a spoiler per se, because the scene ultimately adds up to nothing, but the comedy of it is that you wouldn't expect alien spaceship duels and Star Wars laser battles to happen in the middle of a, you know, religious period piece film about the birth of Jesus, right? And then we kind of get into the real big meat of the sort of parody of the religious element, and that is that Brian, he kind of like pretends to be like some random, you know, lunatic speaker or something. You know, everyone's there trying to give big speeches about meaning of life and, you know, preach and follow the good word. And he ends up kind of trailing off his sentence and running away, but a couple people kind of get really invested in him, in what he has to say. So like, wait, no, tell us more, tell us the story. He's running off like, I've got to go. So all of a sudden this whole crowd of people starts following him, thinking he has the answer. And then trivial bits like him accidentally leaving behind a shoe all of a sudden turn into big, huge debates about like, oh, like, he has given us a sign, we must take off our shoe and follow him in his footsteps. No, I think what he wants us to do is this. It's like a parody now, like insignificant little details that might not have added up to anything become huge giant wars and debates between people over about the correct way to live life. So he finally gets confronted by him, and no matter what he says, he can't shake the fact that they think he's a messiah. Right? It's the Messiah. Hail the Messiah. What are you talking about? I'm not the Messiah. Only the true Messiah denies his divinity. What? What sort of sense is that? All right, I am the Messiah. Now, fuck off. Well, exactly. How should we fuck off? Bunch of stuff like that. And then even though he never actually orders anyone to be killed, they automatically think murder is the only option when one guy disagrees with them about the juniper bushes, right? Yeah, a whole bunch of great stuff like that. Oh man, too many good moments to talk about. But eventually this ends up with Brian being like captured because they think he's a revolutionary figure and he's about to be crucified. And so the whole ending build up, you think like, oh well, it's building up to like, you know, oh they're gonna go in and all his friends and, you know, the People's Front of Judea and the Judean People's Front, Judith, right? They're all gonna get there and they're gonna save him, right, from being crucified. And there's so many moments where he's almost about to get out, like he's up on the cross and he's shouting, and John Cleese, his Roman officer, comes up like, all right, which one of you is Brian? I can release you. And Eric Idle's up there like, oh, I'm Brian, you can release me. And literally they're pulling him off the cross and he's just like, I'm not actually Brian, really, I didn't mean it. I'm wondering if maybe this scene was like a parody of Spartacus. You know, I'm Brian, no, I'm Brian, I'm Spartacus. And like the People's Front of Judea finally shows up and then they're just like a suicide cult. Reminds me of that song, The Book, by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, right? God gave me a knife and wrote seppuku underlined. Great song. So all these efforts to free him kind of fail, and then most people are just there to be like, so we appreciate the sacrifice you're doing for us, so that's really good, mate, so you keep up the good work. And then Eric Idle all of a sudden shows up again as a different person on the cross. Okay. And yeah, the film ends with them getting crucified and dying, but they're all singing a song. One of the best ways to end a movie. Always look on the bright side of life. Da-da, 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 da-da. Always look on the bright side of death. Da-da, 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 da-da. Life's a piece of shit when you look at it. So go on, you may as well give a whistle. And it's just such like a anticlimactic, hilarious way to end the film, and it reminds me of a lot of moments from the Holy Grail. So spoilers for that one as well. But when I watched Holy Grail, I didn't really know anything about like the plot or where it was going to go. So there's a scene early on in Holy Grail where all the townsfolk, they're trying to say, you know, we found a witch, may we burn her? And, you know, they've just like tied a carrot as her nose. And then, what is it, Bedivere, right, becomes the Knight Bedivere. He like has this like hilarious logic, like, you know, well, wood burns and wood floats because wood weighs as much as a duck. So if she weighs as much as a duck, then she's made of wood and therefore a witch, right? And you can't use stone because you can also build a bridge out of stone, right? So don't try to build a bridge out of her. So, you know, hilarious logical fallacies there. And when Arthur, King of the Britons, shows up in that scene, I thought, oh, well, he's going to come in and save this girl, and she's going to be like the main female love interest, right? Or something like that, because it's usually how these movies work. Nope. The faulty logic holds up. She weighs as much as a duck, and so then they just go to burn her, and she probably gets burned as a witch off screen. And it's not to introduce her as a character, it's to introduce Bedivere. So I really liked that subversion of expectations. It's pretty great. And then also at the end of that film, you think like, oh, there's going to be a huge epic battle, right? They've got this big giant army, they're going to storm the castle, and then all of a sudden, like, these police officers from like modern day times that have been like popping up throughout the film as this weird documentary has been being made, they show up and the army's now like 10 people, and they just stuff them all in a van and knock over the camera guy, and that's how the film ends. I remember the first time I watched it, I kind of like kept watching through all that footage of the intermission music, like, wait, is that it, really? That's hilarious. It works better if you see that movie in a theater, which I have. I saw Holy Grail in a theater. It was a great experience. Because, like, the lights come on when the intermission music is playing, so you recognize that that's the exit music cue. And there's no credits because they already spent like 5 minutes doing all the credits at the beginning. Because, you know, a moose once bit my sister. So, you know, Life of Brian's ending kind of reminded me of that. Like, no, the hero doesn't get saved. No, he just dies on the crucifix like Jesus did. And they all sing a song about always look on the bright side of life when you're about to be crucified and die a slow, horrible, painful, torturous death. Yeah, if I was going to talk any more about the film, it would probably just be me recounting my favorite moments. But I definitely love the biggest, dickest stuff. And the weird alien bits and the whole religious parody elements, because it kind of just sort of shows how, like, all this stuff can really crazily spiral out of control. So, yeah, this is a pretty good one. It's a pretty good one. Yeah, not too much else to say, you know. Again, I don't know if this is actually a Christmas movie because people don't seem to count movies related to Jesus as Christmas movies, which I find a little odd, because, like, isn't that the point, you know? But I wanted to talk about a Monty Python movie because, I think we all could use a good laugh now and then, especially from a movie so hilarious and controversial as this one. Oh, the last bit to talk about. It's funny, it's the one that people kind of look back on as this scene kind of being a little ahead of its time, and it's like kind of about a gender identity. A warning, I'm going to talk about identity politics, so, be warned. But there's the bit where another of Eric Idle's characters is all like, he's a male, and he's saying, like, I want to be named Loretta, and I want to have babies. And John Cleese's character is like, what? You can't have babies, right? You're a man, you're a woman. And then they say, like, well, suppose we fight for his right to have the ability to, because it's symbolic of our fight against oppression and against the Romans. So I think it's a little interesting that Monty Python had a character that was trying to, have this more forward-thinking identity of gender versus sex in their movie, right? But, I don't know, it was a cool little detail, I think. Maybe it was ahead of its time. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that one. So I mentioned that this was the second most controversial religious movie of all time. Well, what is number one? Well, stay tuned for the next episode, and I'll talk about that more controversial one. Hopefully no one will succumb to too much temptation by that time, if you know what I mean. Anyway, hope you all enjoy that, and y'all have yourselves a good night.